Hello and welcome back to Mama Juice, where the bad moms come for the juice. I am your host, Sandra, and today is actually a follow-up on my previous episode. I'm going to be interviewing my friend Brianna, who is a foster to adopt mom, and I just have a ton of questions. So stay tuned.
Hold up.
So today we are back to answer questions, because last time we heard your 6 kids worth of stories, and in my mind I was like, I have questions. Well, first, what do you think of your episode?
I don't like to see myself on video.
Yeah, it's weird. You get used to it.
I don't like to hear my voice. Yeah, when I was doing my Lula thing, I got used to it, but
Yeah.
that's been a while, so I'm not used to it anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I didn't get to hear what you said at the end until I watched it back, and that made me emotional too. So,
aww. Well, that
thanks for that.
Did you get any feedback from family and friends?
I did. Yeah, actually, I got a text last night
Goodness.
from my aunt in Idaho that was like, "I watched your video. You and Jimmy are such an inspiration. We love you."
Aww.
And then I told you Brody's teacher had texted me and said she watched it, and then she actually shared it, and the aide in his classroom shared it. I was like, "Jeez."
Yeah, I like it.
I look at my story and my story is just my life. I don't know. I don't think it's that special.
Obviously, you didn't even know. I felt apparently emotional about your story. I didn't even think I felt that emotional until we were talking about it. So I was like, this is so beautiful.
I guess just living it every day, I don't see it like that. So
yeah,
but
totally. I like your shirt.
Oh, thanks.
That's cute. So what is the number one advice you would give a couple who is thinking about pursuing foster to adopt?
I initially want to say, don't think too hard about it, just do it. Because you hear all these stories and everyone's story is different, and what happened to them may not be what happens to you, and what happens to you may not happen to anyone else, because it depends on the kid and the family and the parents and the judge and the policies at the time and all of that. And so it's you can hear all these stories, but the more you think about it, the more you psych yourself out. So I say, if you're thinking about doing it, just do it. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, hardest thing I've ever done. But it's been the most rewarding too. And I'm just as grateful for my kids as people say they should be of me, and that I know they are of us for helping them and loving them and giving them what they didn't have before. But it's the hardest thing I've ever done, but I would do it all again, because it's just that many blessings have come to our life just because of that.
Don't make me cry again. So the process is pretty lengthy though, right?
Yeah, so when we did it 7 years ago, we started Memorial Day weekend and we were done by the middle of August. And so, what is that? 3 months of classes.
Not too bad.
Yeah, and right now it's actually a little more condensed than that, because one, they had so many people that wanted to do it and could only fit so many people into those classes. And so they hybrided it, and so half of it's online. And now with COVID, it's all online, and then just the inspections and stuff. So in a way, now it's a little faster than it was when we did it. And in a way, it could take longer because of COVID and scheduling and so many things. It's 12 hours of training, classes and information and policies and all of that. And then it's just, we had to get our fingerprint clearance cards. We had to do a CPR training class. We had to get our home inspected by the state. And then we had to get our home inspected by our licensing agency, kind of piggybacked on each other. But so it's a matter of how quickly you get the paperwork turned in and all of that going, to how quick or how long it takes to actually get licensed. But it's about 3 to 4 months generally.
What do you feel was the most valuable takeaway from the classes you had to take that helped you as a foster mom?
to remember that there's no such thing as a perfect child. Like,
Mm.
have you ever seen the movie Instant Family?
I don't think so.
Okay, everyone needs to watch it because we got the chance to go watch it in a screening because we were adoptive parents. And the entire auditorium was full of either foster or adoptive parents. And we all like laughed at the same parts and we all cried at the same parts and we all like shouted at, and it's like it's based on a true story. Like the man that wrote the script for the movie, it's his story of how he adopted his children. And it's in California, so their process of like pairing and matching children to families is a little different than in Arizona,
Right.
but it's the most accurate thing I've ever seen in my life. Like,
Okay.
when I watched it, I got emotional because it was like, this is our story. Like, this is our life. Like, this happened to us. Those reactions and those actions were real. And there's one part in there when they're in their class and the lady, they're having them draw like their perfect child, like their dream child. And then the instructor of the class walks by with an eraser and erases them and said, perfect children don't exist. Like, you have to remember that they're not damaged, but they've
been through trauma.
hurt. Yeah, they're trauma, and they don't trust you. They don't like you. That was the most impactful thing to me. Not that they're not perfect children, because my children are perfect to me. They're my kids, but just that these kids are not walking into your home thinking this is the best day of their life. This is the worst day of their life. And then another thing that we learned, they had one of us in our group sit in the middle in a chair, and they were holding a paper that said child. And then in their hand, they were holding a bunch of strings, and they had each of us get in a circle around them. And it was like you were either the foster parent or the case manager or the attorney, bio mom, bio dad, siblings, teachers, friends, all these things. And one by one, they went by and just like cut all of the strings. Oh my gosh, why is this making me emotional? But they cut all of the strings and said, when this child comes to your home, they've lost all attachment and contact, communication, seeing people that they know and love, except the foster parents, the biological parents in most cases, and the case manager. So it was like, in that visual, seeing that this child literally has nothing. They're coming to your home with nothing, and they are just trying to stay above water and trust you. But that makes it so much more important for us foster parents to work as a team with their biological parents, no matter what opinions we make of them or what we think about them or anything, how much we do hate them in the moments, but to love them and support them in what they're trying to do and show that child that we support that. Because if we don't support their parents, then that child hates you, because that's still their parent. No matter how much they've messed up, that's still their parent. And so that, I think those two things together just like hit me like, this isn't just parenting. This is work. Like, this is a job. This is hard, because I didn't lose anyone as a child. I was raised by both of my parents. My house had our rocky moments, but I had both of my parents, and I had my grandparents until I was a teenager, and now I've lost most of my grandparents, but I had them into adulthood, which is rare. And so that part is hard for me to like have empathy or sympathy for. And so just kind of wrapping my head, it's like a constant reminder though, that I need to remember that they've lost things that I've never lost. And so I have to take a step back and remember that things they say to me or ways they act, it's not personal. It's not at me. It's because they're dealing with this trauma that they're going to have in their head and their hearts and their lives forever.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, though, for all parents to remember, no matter how you became a parent, is that no child is perfect. Because there are moments, even as a bio mom, when you bring your baby home from the hospital and you're on cloud 9 because you just had a baby and they're cute and you love them, and then they scream all night long and you're like, this one's broken. Why? Yeah, especially when they get into toddlerhood, you're like, what is wrong with this? Like, this child is flawed. And I think if you constantly remind yourself, like, they're just little humans and they're not perfect, it makes it a little more tolerable.
Little more yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. The part where you said, you know, they cut the string. And the thing about not even just kids, but just people, is even if somebody has caused you trauma, or even if somebody, like a caseworker, you know, yeah, they might have a good relationship with them, but that person only came into their life because of something really hard to deal with.
Right.
So even though, like, all of that is bad memories, like, you just hang on to feelings you have for people.
Yeah.
So that's hard. So what are common questions that people ask you?
I think the most, like, and I don't want to say hurtful, but the most common and, like, ignorant question I've gotten is, well, when are you going to have real kids?
I can't
Or
believe anybody would
are you
say
ever
that.
going to have kids of your own? And I'm like, these are my kids, and
Right.
these are real kids. And I don't know, being someone who's struggled with fertility, that, like, I don't ask people that question because it's offensive, and it's like,
It's weird.
not
To be
and I
honest.
don't think anyone, like, means anything mean by it or
Yeah.
hard by it, but it's just like, you have no idea what other people are dealing with, and so just be
Right.
sensitive. Like, but I think we've gotten lucky in a way, I guess, because most of our kids look like us. And so
Yeah.
we've even been told, like, wait, all of your kids are adopted? No, not all of your kids are adopted. And I'm like, yeah, all of them. And they're like, but they look like you.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not just because we share the same skin color, or we share,
Right.
like, my daughters have, like, facial
Features.
similarities with
Yeah.
me, and attitude attributes. And I know that with my littler kids, that's because I'm teaching them how to be, like,
Right.
their attitude is my attitude, and sometimes that's scary. But my older kids, like, were who they, like, they had personalities already, but they look like me when I was in elementary school. They look like me. Like, it's weird. And even, like, our third daughter has a little bit more, like, olive tone to her skin. She's half Hispanic. But then people, they think, oh, okay, maybe she's adopted. But then they meet my mom, who has, like, a more olive tone to her skin, and they're like, oh, wait, no, maybe that makes sense. I was like, okay, but no.
No. Have you ever heard that some adoptive moms will induce lactation and actually breastfeed their adopted babies?
I have heard that, yes. And I have heard that in the foster system, it's not, I don't know that it's illegal. I've been asked that a lot too with, like, my babies. But I think that you would have to get some sort of, like, permission from the biological mother.
Oh, yeah.
And I just don't see a biological mother, like, giving permission of that to anyone. I know in, like, private adoptions, it's much more common because you can plan for.
That's true. I didn't think about that. So that's more private adoptions. So let me ask you this. If you had that option, do you think you would have done it?
I think so. I think that that is something that I do. I feel like that bond and attachment is missing, like, with my kids. And with foster babies, you can do, like, skin to skin, and it's encouraged because that's a natural, like, babies need that. Not necessarily for us to bond with them, but for them to create that bond with somebody so that they learn how to do that. So we've done that with our babies, but I think that if it was something I could do, I would definitely do it. I'm 100% in support of that. I think it's best. But
it's cool. It's so cool that a woman who has not given birth can lactate.
Yeah, and I've looked into it, like, researched it, because people have asked me, like, a lot of, it's a more common question than I think people realize. But I think that if it were to go to DCS as a question, I've never asked a case manager because I don't want to mess with. I mean, I'm not in a position to do it, but I don't want to be like, wait, what do you mean? Why would you do that? you know, but I think that you would have to get permission, just like everything else. Like if you want to cut a foster child's hair, you have to get written permission from their parent. If you want to pierce their ears or do certain things, because it could be a cultural thing. Like they could not want their hair cut because of a cultural or religious belief. They could, you know, not pierce their ears until a certain age for religious and cultural. And so it's, you have to get their permission, and we're not supposed to like force our cultural and religious beliefs onto a foster child who's old enough to like know the difference.
So then were you allowed to take them to church?
We were allowed to take them to church, but they were not allowed to like receive any sort of lessons from missionaries or anything like that until they were adopted. So they went to church with us. They had gone to church with their family before, and they said they went all the time. From how I've talked to their aunt after, they didn't really go all the time, but they had good memories of going, and so they were excited that we were church-going people and that they wanted to go to church with us. But if they ever told us they didn't want to go, we couldn't force them to go.
One thing that you touched on last time was how you don't go to baby showers and you just feel like, you know, pregnancy announcements still kind of get to you. But I will say that compared to other people that I've seen who have gone through fertility problems, you handle it with a lot more grace. Because I've seen some people be flat out mean about it. They're like, I don't care that you're pregnant because I can't get pregnant. I'm like, what? Like, that's just mean. It's not my fault you can't get pregnant. But I guess, what advice would you give to maybe somebody who just found out that they can't conceive or they're having a really hard time conceiving, to be able to manage their emotional state?
That's hard because I have a few friends who are kind of in my same boat, but even being in the same boat, the situation is very different for everyone. I did fertility for 5 years, but really we only scratched the surface. And so I know more people who have gone through like failed IVF and failed IVI and failed and failed and failed and even succeeded and then miscarried and then or had a stillbirth or whatever it might be. And that is so hard. And I don't know. I go back to think, I don't know any different. Like, I've never had a positive pregnancy test. I've never, I've taken millions. Like, I should have taken out stock. But they've all been negative, and they carry this, looming cloud of doom over that aisle. I don't know, but I think I don't know any different. I've never felt a baby move. I've never had an ultrasound where they're like, oh, there's the baby, you know? And so I think in my head, it's just like, well, this is just my life. This is how it is. I don't know. But for people who have suffered more than I have, it's really hard. It's really, I don't know if I have good advice. I guess my advice would be to just remember that those women who are pregnant and so excited, don't try and kill their joy because, like you said, it's not their fault that they can and you can't. I think the same with anything on social media, though, just keep scrolling or detach yourself from it until you can face that, because it gets easier. It's been years and it's easier, and I handled my sister-in-law's twin pregnancy better than I had her previous ones since all of my stuff. But it's still hard, but I still love her babies. I still went over there and snuggled on them, and I will love them, and I'm happy to help her however I can. I'm happy with the life that I have, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But again, I said before, if I were to find out at 40 that I'm pregnant, I would be over the moon, because it would just feel like, finally, even though I already have 6 kids. So I just think, that's my advice. Detach yourself from the social media aspect of it. You're not going to get away from all of it, because, hello, there's pregnant people walking around Target. But to just remember, everyone has their own struggle, and just because that woman is 7.5 months pregnant and you think she has it all,
Yes.
You don't know what she's dealing with either. And you could not want her problems at all. So I think
That's
as women,
true.
like,
Yeah.
just as women in general, I think that's good to remember, though. Like, just because she looks like she has it all together or her Instagram looks amazing,
Right.
you don't know what it looks like around that 4x4 square. You don't know what problems or trials she's facing that you wouldn't even want to touch.
Right.
So to just remember that each of our lives is our own, and I distance myself from those things. I don't go alone. If I go to a baby shower, I don't go alone. I go with someone else who understands my mindset walking in, so that I can either bounce off of them, or we can both be like, if we leave together, it won't be so weird. Like,
Yeah.
let's just go. It's a quiet break. We're done. We've made our appearance. We dropped off a gift. We smiled. And now we can leave. But it just is that I don't have a lot to say. People think because I have children that I do, that I have a story, that I have a birth story or a pregnancy story. And then I'm like, well, no, she was 4 days old when I got her. So I don't know. Like, I had a lady at Barrows one time stop me when Annie was like 2 weeks old. And she was like, oh my gosh, was she born cesarean? And I'm like, I don't know. and I said no, because I did know that she wasn't. And then people just like, oh my gosh, you look so great. And I'm like, thanks. So I'm just going to carry a newborn around with me all the time, because people are like, oh my gosh, you look so great. They're having a baby. And I'm like, oh, thanks. I feel great.
Right.
But I just
feel amazing.
It's just, yeah, it's just ignorance. People don't know. And so I don't feel the need to explain a bunch to people either. So,
well, and I have a pretty strong feeling about something, and I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for saying this, but I'm going to do it. So, there's this whole like movement almost around like, never ask somebody if they're going to have another baby, never ask somebody if they plan to have kids. You don't know what they're going through. But I just feel like that could apply to anything in life. You could be at work and meet a new young coworker and see they're wearing a ring on the ring finger and be like, oh, when did you get married? And they're like, oh, a year ago, but then my husband died. You know what I mean? Like, everybody could have some kind of sad, horrible story behind your question, and you're never going to know. So, like, if you don't ever ask anybody anything, then sure, you can never make somebody sad. But I just don't think, I think people who, like, pry and, like, bug people, like, when are you going to have a baby? Come on, you should have a baby. You would make a cute baby. And keep going. Like, yeah, that's just rude in general. But I think when people say you should never ask somebody that question, I just think it's kind of silly, because at any point you could ask any person a question that could spark some kind of a trigger for them. Right?
And I 100% agree. Like, I'm never like, ew, don't ask me that. When people ask if I'm ever going to have children, people don't ask me anymore, because I walk around with 7 children. But I think, and also in the Mormon culture, like, that is a huge thing. Like, you're married now, how come you're not pregnant?
Right.
And so it was for 5 years, like, oh, my cousin even assumed that I didn't like children, or that I didn't want them because we were married for so long and didn't have them. She's younger than me, like significantly younger, so she didn't understand. But
I was
she
like,
was
how can anyone think you don't like children?
I know, but when we went to Thanksgiving, like the first time with all 4 of our kids, she was like, wait, what? Okay. And she told me, she was like, I thought you and Jimmy didn't want kids. Like, I just assumed. And I was like, oh no, honey. Like, and so I'm not ever offended by it. I would never like yell at someone for asking me that, because I think the same thing with Brody. Like, I go out into public and I see people's eyes. Like, I see them watching him walk in his braces with his little walker, or in his wheelchair, or I park in a handicap spot and they look at me like, you're 30. Why are you in a parking spot like that? And then I get out my wheelchair and they're like, oh, and they just keep walking, and I'm never offended by that. I'm never offended if someone says, what disability does he have? Or why is he wearing those braces? I'm never offended by it. But I find myself like stopping every once in a while, like, oh, I can't ask them what their son has, even though I am a special needs mom. And so I do feel like I have the grounds to ask that because I'm in your same kind of situation. But I don't know. You're right. We have like taught ourselves to not ask people questions because we could hurt their feelings. And I agree that I think that's dumb because we don't know. Like I was watching a show last night and they were asking this girl like if she had ever lived with a boyfriend or significant other before, and she was like, yeah, I did for 2 years, it was great. And the girl was like, then why are you single now, like what happened? And she was like, well, he died. And they were like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, like that was so mean. And she was like, no, you don't know, like no one knows. And and I feel like part of the healing process though of going through stuff like that, even if it's fertility, like the more you talk about it, the more healing you get. And the more people you help, like you have no idea who's going through exactly what you went through and they're just not talking about it. And if someone would just talk about it, they could talk about it too. And then they could heal. Like we've talked a lot like about that with our 14-year-old because she doesn't think that anyone understands her in high school. And I'm like, I think if you just talked about your actual story, like your real life, you would realize there's more kids at school that are like you or that wish they could have the story you do because of the home life that they feel stuck in. Like you don't understand, like you need to be true to you so that they can see you for you and then learn from you and feel like they can share their story because you were strong enough to share yours. And so I'm not ever offended. Do I come home sometimes and be like, oh, that was so annoying, I hate when people ask me that, it makes me so mad? Sure, but I don't want people to not ask. I don't want people to think that they have to be afraid around it. Like I wore this shirt to the park a couple weeks ago and this mom was like, so I saw your shirt and I just wanted, like she had been thinking about being a foster parent. And so she like came over and talked to me and my friend who were at the park with her like brand new fostered 2-year-old. And she was just like, I didn't even know. Like I just assumed these were your kids until I saw your shirt. And then I was like, wait a minute. Which one of these kids is foster? Like they just, because they're just kids. Like there's no way to identify them. You don't know. And it's just the more we talk about our problems and our trials and the things we've been through, the more people we help. So I agree with you that we shouldn't be afraid to ask people questions.
Yeah, I love that because I see it all the time on social media. You know, people saying how horrible it is to ask that question. But I wonder if like the grief process would help people. You know what I mean? Like you are grieving the loss to become pregnant. Like that's a loss, and that it's something I would imagine would be very hard. I mean, sometimes I feel guilt for being able to get pregnant, just because like. I mean, I don't feel like I'm a terrible mom or anything, but, you know, my situation, like you said, my pregnancy was not full of a lot of happiness. Like, it was very stressful. You know, things happened with their dad, and it just was not a very happy pregnancy as much as I tried to make it that. Because I was happy to be having a baby, but my situation around it was just so heavy. And nobody knew that, you know, who I wasn't super close to. So on the outside, it might look like, oh, cool, Sandra's so excited to be having a baby. And it's like I was, but I also was dealing with a lot of crap. And sometimes, like, my situation, especially when the boys came into it, I'm like, dude, like, this is not the best way to do this. And it makes me feel guilty that people who have the best way to do it can't do that. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
No, yeah, it does.
Yeah, because like you know, like I told you last time, like I just think you guys are such great parents, and you have this really cool. Why do you make me cry? You have this really cool like dynamic in your house, and I really enjoy seeing it. And you know. Your husband seems like a great dad, and it's that 2-parent household that kids deserve. And so when you bring kids into a house that is not that, like I feel guilty for that. So I'm like, if I couldn't provide this to kids, like why were kids given to me? Whereas you could provide this to kids, but it didn't work that way for you. You know what I mean? Like that bothers me for some reason.
And I don't want to say I'm like glad to hear you say that, because your kids are loved. Like, you love your kids and you deserve your kids. But there's times that I think that about, there's 17,000 children in foster care just in Arizona right now. And it kills me. It's like, why are these people who don't care, who take it for granted so much, just given this precious gift so easily that they don't even want?
Yeah.
And people like me who cried and prayed and suffered through to not get it can't have it. And I think that's where just the religious part of me comes out. And I just know, like, there's something bigger than me. And there's someone who has a plan, and they have a plan for me. And had I had my own children, even if I would have just had one baby and then learned that I could never have another baby, I don't know that I would have fostered. I don't know that I would have gone down this route. And I needed to, because my kids needed me and I needed them. Like, I've never felt like more of an adult than dealing with the things that I'm dealing with my kids, and learning the things that they've been through makes me grateful for the childhood I did have, even though I look back on it and think it's pretty messed up. Like, my kids had it way worse than me. And so I'm just grateful for the two parents that I had, and I'm grateful, like, for the little things. And so it just seems like, it seems selfish of me to think, but why can't I have that? Why can't I have what their parents had so easily that they just don't care about, that they're just willing to throw away? But then I pull myself back in and I say, they didn't. They are sick, whether it's mental illness, whether it's drug abuse, whether it's domestic violence, whatever it is, it's a sickness, and it's not who they were when they stepped into this, or it's not. And so it just, I don't know, the world is a sick place. And so at least, I mean, you shouldn't feel guilty. But the feelings come from me too. Like, why is it so easy for some people? Even I've had the conversation with my sister-in-law who just had her 8th and 9th baby. Like, why is it so freaking easy for you and you don't even want any more kids? And here I am, and I would give anything for one. Just for one. I remember having a talk with her. They were losing their house. So it was in like 2010. We had just bought our house. She was losing her house. And she said, like, I would give anything to keep my house. And I said, Julie, I would give up my house for one baby. One. And she was having number 6. And so it was like, you need to just remember what you have and just be grateful for what we have. And here I am 7 years later, 10 years later, I guess, with 7 children who love me and I love them, and I would do anything for them, and you would do anything for your kids. No one's situation is perfect, because even it like makes me laugh when people say, oh my gosh, I love you just have this perfect little family, you have such a happy little home. And I'm like, okay. Like, it's not perfect. It's not like,
right. And I've witnessed your, stuff, and I've heard your stories. I mean, you have a teenage girl, like that alone is like problems. And then you have a teenage girl who was adopted at an older age, like that's added problems. So it's not that I think your home is perfect, but like the core of it is good. No home is perfect, but a good core is what I think is important. And so how I make myself feel better is I just always tell myself, like, for whatever reason, these 3 kids that I created, like, they needed to exist. They have a purpose, and they could only be created by me and him. Like, that's the only way these 3 humans could exist. So that's what I tell myself. So they better do great things in the world.
Right? They better prove it. My sister just got divorced after 12 years, and she's had those moments where it's like, why? Why did that have to happen? If it wasn't meant to be, why was it? And I said, because those 3 boys, like, she has 3 boys, and they needed to come here. They needed to be here with those parents to serve their purpose on earth. And I'm like, that's why. If nothing good came of that relationship, those 3 boys did. And they are her world. old, and she's an amazing mom, and now she's living with my parents again, and it's not how she saw herself at 35, but it's what it is. And we take our we smile through it, and we post edited pictures on Instagram, and
Right.
we let people see the good, because that's all we want people to see. We want to hide the yelling and screaming fix. We want to hide the fact that our daughter doesn't have a door on her bedroom, because that's not fun.
Oh, I feel like you have more stories. Oh, we're coming by soon.
Having a teenager is hard, and having a teenager who knows a life before you is hard, and so privacy is a privilege.
Right.
No,
Totally.
There's hard lessons to learn for me in all of this, and there's hard lessons for them to learn. And I don't know, as foster children, most of their biological parent relationships my parents were my friends, not my parents. And so now I have to be the parent, and they're like, you're mean. And then their friends come over, and they're like, your mom is so nice.
Right.
Like, see, I told you. Like, I am so nice.
Well, I have to go to a boring meeting now, but
oh, fun.
It was a pleasure talking to you again.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like you really do have a lot of really good insight to give people. I like your mind.
I think I do sometimes too. So
yeah, no, I feel like you're going to be a regular guest on my show.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for your time. Have a good day.
You're welcome. Okay. Bye.
I cannot believe I cried again. I really do just love chatting with her about parenting. It's something we've really done over the years since we both became parents. And so it's not new to me, but it's been really great to document it and share it with you guys, because I just feel like she's so insightful, and she comes at everything with such a heart, like she understands that just because she couldn't have it, she's not going to be angry at the world, but she still has her feelings because she's still a human. And I just think it's beautiful how she processes it and how she deals with, the trials that she has dealt with in life. So I'm definitely going to bring her on again. I think we're going to try to set up a regular schedule. Sorry for the technical issues. We're going to try to figure that out as well. But yeah, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it if you would subscribe if you like this episode. Like I said, there are more to come. So bye, guys.